Welcome, everybody. My name is Mina Jane. I'm the director of the Ashland Public Library in Massachusetts, and I'm here with Kristine Eckart, who is, oh my gosh, she wrote this book, Meet Me at Luke's, all about the Gilmore Girls. She has the blog about with Rory's reading challenge, and if you are a fan, as I am, as you can tell, you're going to love this talk. So just a couple things before we get started. I want to thank the Friends of the Ashland Public Library for supporting all of our programs. We couldn't do without them. I'd also like to thank Kristine for letting us share this program with other libraries because, of course, when libraries work together, we make magic. Not Stars Hollow level magic, but pretty good magic. You can buy signed books by Kristine from Aesop's Fable, our favorite local indie bookstore, and I'll put a link in that about that in the recap email I send out to everybody when I send out the recording as well. If you have questions for Kristine, please put them in the Q&A, which is a button at the bottom of your Zoom screen. And if you just want to chat with each other, the chat's going to be open the entire hour. So feel free to tell us your favorite Stars Hollow stories, your favorite characters, the thing that made you crazy, whatever it'll be. Kristine, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Of course, I'm so excited always to talk about Gilmore Girls and just to see, where people are signing in from, and the chat kind of looks like all over, which is so exciting to see, because I can't physically make it everywhere, unfortunately. So it's great to see, people signing in from everywhere.
Ah, so tell us a little bit about yourself, Kristine. I didn't do too much of a bio, and then let's talk about the book.
So I'm a big Gilmore Girls fan. Surprise! I even wore so it's harder to see it, but I have my Luke's holiday sweatshirt on. Um, I'm a big Gilmore Girls fan, and I've always loved this show and been a writer. And so when I started going through the Rory Gilmore reading challenge, it just became clear that this was something bigger
Mm-hmm.
than just a show. Um, that the books and the show were just such a big impact on me and my life and who I am today. And I knew that so many people had stories like that if they watched the show with their moms, or it's a best friend story or something like that. So I really wanted to both celebrate the show for the 25th anniversary that's this year, but also a testament to the impact that it's just had on people and their daily lives.
Mm-hmm.
And so that all came together in Meet Me at Luke's Lessons in Life and Love from Gilmore Girls.
Fantastic. Well, for those of you who don't know this, the Rory Gilmore Challenge, you've read 167 books out of 460. I mean, I watched that show at least a couple times, and I would have
Yeah.
never known there were that many books in Rory's reading list.
Yeah, and those numbers are probably a bit old because I updated it as I went through the book, and there's probably closer to 500, especially with, some people count a year in the life in that. There are just so many references, and people don't realize that's very common with a lot of different shows. And that's why I do all the TV reading lists on my site. I just put up Grey's Anatomy today, which is my other favorite. So now, well, seasons 1 through 10, because there were a gajillion seasons of Grey's. So I just did the first half. But once you start to hear it, you'll be like, oh, this person is also mentioning Carrie, and it's in this one, and in this one, and in this, people will automatically sort of understand Gossip Girl because they do mention Rory, but they mention so many books and so many different TV shows, and it's coming from the writers who have that very pop culture driven mind. And
Mhm.
so once you start to see those little things, every show you watch, you're like, oh, that's going to be from that, and that's from that. And it's just so cool to rediscover that as you go along. And like I said, it's in, so many different TV shows that it's really incredible to see, you know, the impact of pop culture in a fun way. Nobody's gonna test you on the street or make you write a PhD about Anna Karenina or whatever. That's not the point. When you can
Mhm.
start to recognize with those things, and it resonates, that's when pop culture has the best impact.
Mhm. Now, Gilmore Girls, I have a story. I watched The Year in the Life without my daughter. We watched the entire series together, and I
Yeah.
didn't wait for her, and she's still very crusty with me about it years later. So, I mean, it's such a thing that people did watch together.
Yeah.
But so talk about pop culture. I mean, there are so many pop culture references in Gilmore Girls. I mean, like it was just this constant stream. And if you
Yeah.
didn't know it, some of it, you're like, oh, I feel dumb.
Yes. And you shouldn't feel dumb. Please don't, because there's so many, and even I don't know them all, or like I haven't read all the books, so there's, just no way one person, you'd also have to think there's probably like seven people in a room coming up with this stuff. Like
Mhm.
that's not just one mind to start with. Um, but that's also why we decided to include little icons in Meet Me at Luke's so that every time that I reference a book that's on the list or a movie or TV show that they also referenced, there's a little icon. Um, and I also put in some of my own because I couldn't resist. But just so people could see where those things naturally popped up
Mhm.
um, and have a little indicator because it is hard to catch them all. And um, I'm a big believer in like learning things through experience, whether it's a book or a movie. So if they mention something, I do want you to read with your phone right by you because I know it's there and I want you to look it up and be like, oh, that's a movie I do want to watch, or that's a book I should add to my, TBR.
Mhm.
So I do want people to realize they're there and learn it. And that way, the next time they see it, or, I was going to say go to the movie store and rent a movie, but that's not a thing.
Oh.
Um, if they see it streaming,
Jump
you're
onto
like, that's
Netflix.
that movie Lorelai loved. I want to watch it too. Um, and just get to it that way.
Hmm.
I think it's so much more fun and, it makes things very visual too, like
Hmm.
that, we don't have that element. We did a little bit through the illustrations in the book, but kind of brings in a little bit more of Stars Hollow
Hmm.
into your experience.
So let's go back to let's sort of like go over a quick overview of the book. Like what is the format? How did you decide to write it the way that you wrote it?
Um, so it's based off of the blog that I was just writing my experiences and thoughts as I went through the Rory Gilmore Reading Challenge. Um, and I was moving to the apartment I'm currently in now, and life was just like the biggest mess, one of the biggest messes I've ever seen. And it was really, really bad. And I also happened to be reading Gone with the Wind at the time. And there was a quote from Lorelai that just kept going around and around in my head that was, I'll think about it tomorrow at
Hmm.
Tara, which is from Gone with the Wind. And it helped me just sort of prioritize things. Like I needed to worry about what was right in front of me right now and tomorrow's problems. We'll get there tomorrow, hopefully. And it really got me through everything. And then when I got here, I actually really hated it. But again, Lorelai sort of crept into my brain, and I thought of when they moved into the potting shed, and she just made it so nice, and Rory loved it so much, and it was a tool shed.
Yeah.
And I was like, if she can make a tool shed nice, I can, certainly make a, you know, New York City apartment nice. So I saw that they were just teaching me all these life lessons in little moments and very little things, and started writing all of that down and putting it together. And with the 25th anniversary coming up, we wanted to combine sort of moments that are our favorite from the show with these life lessons that I've learned. So it's things that were also very prevalent as themes in the show, like finding your home and creating your home, or finding your community and your relationships with your friends, how to find your soulmate, your person, how to find your purpose, your career, all that kind of stuff. Um, Overall structured as themes from the show, but then also how it affected and changed my life.
Hmm.
Uh, and sort of, I hope, gives people kind of a buffet of options of if this is something that's also happening in your life. I like having options to choose from and saying, oh, I think maybe that could work for me.
Hmm.
Or, no, I'm going nowhere near that, but I know what I don't want now. Let's maybe find something else to just sort of gauge, as a way to help themselves, but also to take these characters that, yes, those storylines are done, but you can kind of carry them with you. And it,
Hmm.
makes them feel like they're still alive and like, Lorelai and Rory are still walking around in my head or something like that.
And they do. So give us an example of something that's in the book that we might relate to.
Uh, I think one of the biggest ones that I've talked to people about is finding your community.
Hmm.
And that kind of comes in different little subcategories. Like I said, there's one specifically about friends and finding friends. And as an adult, that can be really hard when
Hmm.
they're not just, in front of you every day. And I've had to work really hard on that and also translating these relationships that I had to when my best friend got married. It felt very much like Rory sort of navigating her relationship with Lane, who just got
Hmm.
married. Like that's your person, and now you're sort of giving them to someone else. Um, and it was like I had to recalibrate for a second. So just walking through those things. Um, and I think finding where you belong is such a prevalent thing. Like we all want to find that place and that thing. And sometimes it's with a person. For me, it was also um, in the theater. And this is one of my favorites because it's actually a side character that um, I talk about Brad, who left Chilton, and he was like, that little sweating boy in the corner that nobody liked. And he went and was on Broadway, and he came back like a totally different person. And I think that is a very prevalent experience that I also just like didn't know where I belonged. And then
Hmm.
I did some theater in high school, and I thought, these are my people, and I get it now. And like, these are who I'm supposed to go find in the world. And
Hmm.
Brad just came back with a confidence, and I think that really instilled a confidence in me. So it's looking for those communities and trying and putting yourself out there. And once you figure out what works, like expanding on that
Hmm.
and bringing that confidence into other spaces.
Hmm.
So I think, yeah, community is the reason that people love the show so much, but it's also something I know people really want in their lives in so many different forms. So I think with things, the world changing the way it is, community is so important. And I know how much that resonates with everyone.
So I wanted to ask about the characters because, there is community and there's so much love in Stars Hollow, but there's also so much annoyance. Like, think
Yeah.
about whatever the
Taylor.
Taylor and
Yeah.
Kirk and, so many characters that I'm just like, like, is that a learning experience for us too? Like, how to deal with people that annoy us constantly?
Yeah. I think it's also looking at things from their point of view. And
Hmm.
that's what, TV is a great medium for that. Books are an incredible medium for just putting you in someone else's shoes. And so I think, kind of like Brad on the outside, like I get it. I can be a total Paris too sometimes. Um, and so that sort of Brad character is harder for me to get into. But the more I looked at it, I was like, I get it. And that theater thing really connected with me, even though he was someone that, I wouldn't say had resonated with me or like made an impact the first time I saw him. So I think things like Taylor may be a little bit more difficult, but I do talk about Kirk in the book of how dedicated he is to trying new things, which is really incredible because it's so hard to really put yourself out there and be vulnerable and to do new things. And so, as annoying as he is for some of those things, he also has this bravery that, I don't think we talk about, especially when it comes to ourselves, and how he must feel, to really put himself out there in his career and trying all these things, or with Lulu when he hasn't had this big history of romance and stuff like that. So it's really shifting that perspective that I think helps,
Hmm.
um, because all of those characters can be very weird, but that's also what makes them wonderful. And I think the more we look at our world, like the weirdness is so wonderful sometimes. And even though it's not exactly Stars Hollow, I think having that in our lives, like it just makes it fun and funny. And yes, it will annoy everybody, but hopefully there's also, you know, a lot of love underneath it. And I
Hmm.
think that's what makes Stars Hollow special is there still is a lot of love in there.
Oh, absolutely. What about the generational, mother-daughter relationships? Like, so, starts with Trixie, goes to, oh my gosh, I forgot her name.
Emily.
Emily, yes, and then Lorelai, and then Rory, and now Rory, is potentially going to have a baby.
Yeah.
So, and maybe it'll be a girl. But, like, how does that play into the book and like the lessons we need to learn from those relationships?
It's really incredible to have that sort of lineage of generations because I think it helps the show be relevant to different age groups at the same time. I was sort of in the generation that we were Rory age when it first started, and now I am Lorelai's age. So there are things that I'm watching Lorelai do that I'm like, yeah, that makes total sense now.
Well, I'm going to say there's not a huge difference there.
It's not a huge, huge
For
difference.
15 years, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But still, it's like you sort of see things now through different characters' eyes,
Hmm.
that you weren't necessarily like, I wasn't thinking about, setting up my house and that kind of thing when I was Rory's. Like it was all career. And so I think things have just shifted, the way you watch them. And so it's good to connect with those, but also like to see these other perspectives, I think helps. And like there are different, so many ways to connect with people that I hear people are like, now I'm in my Emily era. And the things that Emily makes says makes a lot of sense. So I think it's great to like tap into those different personalities and just kind of let yourself go wherever. And now with streaming, it being so available, so many new people are discovering it every day, which is really fun and special. Um, and so, yeah, I have a favorite character, but it changes every time I watch. So
Well, who's your favorite character right now?
right now, I think it's Lorelai. And for a while when I was watching it, recently it was Richard. So it changes very every time I watch it.
Oh my gosh, it's so funny. I don't, I'm the same way. Like, I can't always say that I have a favorite character, but I do. I think one of the things I wanted to ask about the mother-daughter relationship is that obviously there was so much love there too, like just down the generations. Not sure about Trixie there, but there was so much miscommunication as
Yeah.
well, you
Yeah.
know. And so that is something that I think that we can all relate to. Like we see things in our own perspective and not others.
Yeah.
So we just said like Emily was very relevant to somebody, annoyed
Yeah.
somebody because they were so close to that was so similar to their own mother.
Yeah.
um, is that something you hear a lot? Is that, as you said,
It
I'm in the Emily era, like people say,
Yeah.
I'm
And I think,
really connected.
yeah, it depends on, we all have different relationships with our family. I hear a lot of, you know, Lorelai Rory sort of relationships, whether it's, like the mother watches with her daughter or vice versa. But I also hear a lot that, say like my mother was like Emily and I was like Lorelai and we had that sort of dynamic. And so in those instances, it's helped to see the other side of that. Um, and sometimes it's like, you got to do what you got to do to protect yourself. If that is finding a new home, then sometimes that is it. And there's comfort in that I am not alone in my family relationship being really messy. So, it's different for everyone, but you hear a lot of different stories. And I think for different reasons, it's either comforting or reassuring uh,
Hmm.
to have just the whole dynamic because not every relationship's perfect all the time. And those miscommunications happen. So I think, it's nice to have that degree of separation
Hmm.
to sort of watch from afar and see like, oh, that didn't necessarily occur to me because I was so close with my family, that it sort of helps to watch from the outside.
Hmm. Although I want to go back to the concept of bravery, which you had mentioned with Kirk, and that's something that I thought so much about Lorelai.
Mm,
That she could have easily just said, "Okay, I'm just gonna live the posh life,"
yeah.
but it was so not her, and Stars Hollow was so her. So that goes back to like that sense of, you know, um, taking ownership of your own self, even at that young age. And how does that, is that something you hear from young people that like they saw that and they're like, oh, I don't have to do what's expected of me?
Mm. Yeah, I think whether it's expectations of, what being a woman is. I know, just the intelligence level of the show is
Hmm.
not something that was on TV, a lot of that time. So people seeing Rory and Lorelai and how smart they were, and I was like, yes, I can be like that too. um, definitely resonated with a lot of viewers, but also things like, finding your place. And it is very hard to step out of your comfort zone. And I was very Lorelai in the way of, I grew up in South Carolina and it was not for me. So I was like, bye. Um, and I saw that as a necessity, which Lorelai very much did too. And so I, moved to big cities and stuff like that. And I just like knew it was what I had to do. But my mom will say, other will people will be like, that's so brave. And I'm like, what? Because to me, it was just like survival. That's what I had to do for me. Um,
Mhm.
so I think, again, to have that degree of separation to really see like that is a bold move,
Mhm.
whether it's moving away from things you've known or from some sort of stability. I changed careers in this, and having Lorelai sort of as that guiding, you know, foundation, just when like I didn't have things and you sort of have to make do out of nothing,
Mhm.
uh, was really nice to have along with me and inspiring me. And that's a hard decision to make, to step away from any sort of stability or anything you've known. But the payout can be really incredible when you do. And so it's amazing to have people with you on that journey, whether they are real or not. You have people in your corner, and
Mhm.
that's, a tool that can keep you going when the days are tough.
Mhm. But I also think I actually see it the other way is that she left an uncomfortable situation. She was never really
Yeah,
felt like she was never really comfortable in that whole rich, big house
yeah,
type of thing. And she found her comfort place, even though it's being a maid in an inn. She accomplished so much
yeah,
with nothing, like you said.
yeah,
And that to me is very inspiring. Like I think that's why she is a character is so
yeah,
inspiring to so many people. And I love this comment. While Emily kind of comes across as cold, mean, and demanding, I think she's expressing what was true for many of us women who, at that era, we did what we were expected to do by society and for our husband's career.
exactly.
Um, yeah, and then Lorelai's generation changed that, and Rory's generation changed, even more so.
Mhm.
So, yeah, I mean, I think we all connect with the different characters at different times.
Yeah.
But I want to talk about Richard a little bit now. Your current favorite or your last favorite?
My
I,
previous, yeah, favorite.
I love this. Is it the second episode where they go golfing?
Yeah.
And he's just like, "What am I going to do with this girl?" And she's like, "What am I going to do with this guy?" And
Mhm.
they connect like so fully, and
Yeah.
that sort of like is the tenor of their relationship the rest of the show for the most part.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so how is that for you in writing about, not just the female characters, but now this male character who's such a strong, domineering part of this, life that they have.
Yeah. For me, I think the intelligence, and he's a great example of sort of the way that literature can change your life and how you lean on it. That like when his business decisions fell apart, he was reading,
Mhm.
and that's what comforted him or like gave him his next move. It was like a what would Richard do in business? Um, and whether things were sort of cutthroat or not, like for him, he was like referencing Macbeth or whatever, which is pretty cutthroat for the amount of people that make it out alive. So, like, I think it's just the impact of education. And I don't mean like an Ivy League education. I mean, like, that I'm sure Trix had him, like in Egypt, riding the camels or whatever. And like, yes, that's privilege, but just like going out into the world and experiencing those things and taking them in, um, and letting them guide you. And he's also like Richard is very loyal. He is a family first kind of person, which I really love and respect. And I also think it's that ability to find those things with people that you don't think you have a connection with. They had such a beautiful relationship because they love talking about books and they love talking about travel. And I have those sort of like pseudo parental grandparental relationships with people that, have come into my life. And I was like, maybe we're very different, but we always talked about like Broadway shows and what we were seeing. And so I think it's really special to find those things with people in your life because they did have a really special relationship. And he really affected Rory. Um, and just to be open to that when it comes through.
Hmm. Right. And even I mean, like we were talking about Emily and the expectations on her, but there were certain expectations on him as well
Oh,
to
yeah.
provide, to be the, strong leader of the family kind of thing. And
Yeah.
having his daughter like leave like that. Cause he was like, you're gonna get married, he's gonna work in my business, you
Yep.
know, and they were like having none of it. So I think it was hard on everybody.
Yeah. And they are very much a product of their generation and where they come from. And I think I talk about Gilmore things that I'd like to manifest for the future. And a sort of prequel show is one of them. I would love to see early Emily and Richard or even Trix,
Hmm.
just because you can see the way they've been raised and the way they are affected. I think, especially with Emily and Trix, um, that it's very telling of that's where Emily has to work for it. And that's so fascinating. Um, and so it does change and all those things. But I also think Richard was a little more vocal in telling Lorelai that he was proud of her. That I
Hmm.
think for him, he was sort of able to see past it and grow a little bit. Whether it was sort of the heart attacks or something that put things into perspective for him or not. But I think he had more of those moments of connection with Lorelai, that they were sort of able to work past it, which
Hmm.
was nice.
Okay, so I don't want to get too far away from my question about. I definitely want to get into the love interest. I'm sorry,
Yeah. Oh
the love
yeah.
interest, because obviously, Emily and Richard had their love, their relationship, but then she was always jealous about that woman, from his Yale days. But then there's Lorelai, and then there's Rory, and this is kind of like maybe a little bit controversial opinion, but I was like, they were so close, and yet they lied to each other all the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was
Um,
like, that happened to me on like rewatches. I was like, wait a minute, now she's lying to her again. And she's not telling her that again.
yeah. And that really bothers me a lot. Not just in television, but like in fiction. Like I hate the miscommunication trope, even though it's popular. Because I'm a very like, I'm just gonna say it flat out and whatever happens, happens sort of person. Um, whether it is part of the relationship, like not wanting to rock the boat, which is sometimes, Lorelai is like, our relationship's going good. She's in college. I'm not sure where I stand anymore, sort of thing.
Oh,
But
can I just say the day they moved into college was probably one of my very favorite episodes.
cute. It's so
Yeah, when
good.
she had to go get the mattress and she slept
Back
over,
in,
and then
back out, back.
they checked out all of the restaurants. That was just genius to
So
me.
cute. Yeah. But I also think like without it, would there be any conflict? It's not like, they're saving lives or diffusing bombs or whatever. Like there has to be some sort of conflict for people to watch a show. And I think here it's mostly emotional. Um, and so it just is needed for TV as much as I hate it. I'm
And
like, just, you're supposed to be best friends. Just tell her, or that's your fiance. Just tell him you still want to get married. Like, but yeah, I think they have to have stakes somewhere just because it's not like physical stakes. It has to be emotional. So I think that also kind of comes into play a little bit.
yeah, although again, controversial. I thought the thing with Christopher had to happen, like in the season 7. It was horrible. I hated it because I love Luke so much. But I was like, she always would wonder, right? If it could have happened differently.
Yeah. And I think like I think maybe people would have been more okay with it if it had happened earlier. Like,
Well, Amy wasn't going to write that.
yeah, which it did, but like um a little bit, and then he had to go back to Sherry. But I think it's just yeah, that it was kind of so late in the game where like we were so sold on her and Luke. Whereas if she and Luke had just been flirtatious, it wouldn't have been as, a big a deal. But Amy Sherman has been pretty vocal about like the mirror effect with Lorelai and Rory. And so I think, even though she wasn't there, it does fit her sort of mirror effect plan for the show of, to have Lorelai be with Christopher and Rory with Logan and their sort of respective people. And thank goodness that derails quickly and she could go back to Luke.
That's right. Um, I do say one of my other really interesting storylines I liked in the year of the year in the life was when she went off on to do the Reese Witherspoon walk.
Yeah, wild.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I was like,
I just finished rewatching A Year in the Life, um, which I don't do often. So I think Lorelai has had such an incredible like inner growth arc. And she comes back and she asks for what she wants. And she's like in therapy and working on herself. It's like, this is not the life I wanted, but I'm going to get it. And so, yeah, I really liked Lorelai and her storyline as much as I wish they had gotten married sooner. Um, I am glad that we got to watch it.
yeah, but they were together. Like there wasn't
They were
that.
together, but they weren't like married or, there was a sort of final step that I think she was missing. Um, and either couldn't vocalize it or didn't know what it was or um, something like that. But I am glad that everybody sort of got some closure there.
Well, did we? I mean, we don't know who's the father of
Well, with
Rory.
Lorelai, we got some
Oh,
closure.
okay, all right, all
That
right.
was very specific. Sorry. Not with, yes.
That's okay.
There's
Um,
clearly not closure with Rory.
yeah. So people really love and hate Rory, right?
Yeah.
Like, what is it that they love about her? What is it they hate about her?
I think people loved that she was so driven. She was so focused and so smart. Um, and that really resonated with a lot of people who felt like they weren't as cool for being that way. But Lorelai and Rory made it cool to be smart.
Hmm.
And so I think people really identified with that in Rory. And so when she started to lose her way, that is really difficult to watch. And as a very, self-proclaimed Paris Rory person, that is always very difficult for me because I'm like laser focused. And so anything that pulls me away is like the worst thing in the world, even when it's not. Um, as much as I don't like it, I do think it's relatable for people to burn out, to flame out, to get lost, to have those things. Like, yes, there are times when I'm like, just get a job. I don't think Lorelai, to me, it's less believable that Lorelai would be okay with Rory not having a job. Because Lorelai, she had to work for it. And she was like, I'll take any job. I don't know how to do a thing, but put me to work. Uh,
Hmm.
and so there's a part of that that I wish somehow did trickle down to Rory that I don't think it did. Um, but I do think we need to be okay with being lost for a while. Um, but it's not okay to just like throw up your hands and be like, whatever. I do think you have to work for it and work through it. And I think, we sometimes need some tough love, and Jess comes in there at the best times with some tough love, which I know everybody likes. Either why did you drop out of Yale or something like that. So I think, yeah, there is a big burnout, flame out thing with Rory that's just hard to watch. Um, but I hope she gets it together. And like, I know I'm just reading the comments, like, sometimes with her personality, the heart issue about A Day in the Life, like that poor guy that she was stringing along. Oh, it was like Paul or
Adam? No. Was it Adam? No, Paul?
I thought it was
Paul.
clearly, I mean, clearly that's the point of this guy, but also like how just so mean. Like just break up with that poor man. Um, so yeah, like clearly she's just lost because she found it so early. I think, the roles are reversed a little bit, but like I'm hoping she finds her way.
Do you think that that incident with Logan's father, as really, I mean, it crushed her obviously, but
Yes.
like that kind of thing, can it affect a person for that long?
I think it depends on who you are. Um, I agree that the tone and delivery of what Mitchum said was horrible. I think the message is correct. Um, and that, once you kind of are out in the workforce and stuff like that, to get ahead, nobody's going to ask you for things. Like, publishers are not knocking on your door going, "Hey, do you have a book for me that might be the next thing?" Like, you do kind of have to go out there and do it on yourself and put yourself out on a limb. And Rory's not great with that.
Right.
And so that, like, it could have been a better conversation of like, look, here's the thing, real world, you're just going to have to jump in and do it. But I think you have potential. We can work through that. Or, Lorelai could have been like, maybe, but here's how you do it. And she could see that, Lorelai did that kind of thing all the time. So,
Hmm.
like, it can go a lot of different ways, but I do think the message behind it, as bad as it was, is sometimes you do have to have that sort of gumption and say something when you're not asked, or start a project when nobody is asking for it. And like, she's gonna have to do that if she's gonna publish that book. Nobody's like, I think in this small town in Connecticut that nobody's heard of, there's probably a writer there with the next big book. Like, she's gonna have to put herself out there and get an agent and get a publisher. So she's gonna have to learn it eventually. Uh,
Hmm.
it would have been nice if she had recovered faster, but
But
you know,
I mean, that's life too. Like some of us
like
do and some of
sometimes,
us don't, you know?
yeah, yeah.
But I also felt like there was a sense of, like Emily and her, there was, that, oh, I'm only going to write for the best, publications.
Mhm.
And so she wasn't going to start small, it felt
Yeah,
like.
yeah,
Which
yeah.
really like is curious to me in terms of like that generational thing is like, her mom was so opposed to anything, taking anything from her parents. Um, and this is a fun comment about how the town loved Rory, but they didn't really help her. They didn't. Nobody ever took her aside and said, except for Jess.
Right. And I think he would probably like to distance himself from the town as much as he could.
Yeah.
And I don't know, like, okay, and so this is also going to be um, very controversial. And I say this in the book and I stand by it. I think if Max had married Lorelai, some of this stuff would not have happened, because Max would have been the person to say, like, look, just because you've had a bad day and you've read Moby Dick doesn't mean you steal yachts, okay? That's what the pound cake is for. That is a very literal interpretation of, Moby Dick, and that's not what this means at all. Like, she still had some lessons to learn from Max Padita, and I think he would have gotten her through some of those things a lot better and would have known sort of how to guide her. And Luke, as much as we love him, wouldn't, or she wouldn't have come to him with that sort of thing or something like that. So I do think some of those really big lost moments later on, I think Max actually would have dealt with really nicely. He's not my favorite for Lorelai, but I think he would have been a very good influential father for Rory and really
Mm.
would have changed a lot in her future, I think.
Right. He was a little bit more, he wasn't as close. Like Luke and Christopher were all so close. They just thought she was perfect.
Yeah.
And so they didn't. But I don't think Lorelai would have let him.
I don't know. And that's why, like, he's clearly not right for Lorelai. Um, but I think he would have gotten to a point, sort of like how Luke did, and that's why Lorelai proposed. I think, if he found some outside way or something, he still would have said, "Look, I know you. I know what a great, bright kid you are, and like, I see you floundering, and how can we do this, rationally, and talk about it and learn from it, and go some different ways and try some different things." Like, I think he just would have had sort of a intellectual balance where Lorelai's is very emotional. I think they could have balanced that out for Rory and helped her down that path
Mhm.
together.
I think that's really interesting too, that, as much as we go opposite of our parents, we're like, oh, I'm never going to be like that.
Mhm.
That that's not necessarily always right either.
Yeah.
Interesting. That just occurred to me. Um, and Ashley says, I hated how Rory always ruined Lorelai's big moments, whereas they like Lorelai was always there for her. Like when Rory graduated, oh my God, I was bawling
I
with the
know.
rest of
Always
them.
makes me cry.
So it just seems interesting that that Rory was she was kind of a little crap, right? Like sometimes.
Yeah, and like that clearly came into, I mean, do you think Max would have, I don't know. Let her skip graduation. I think, there are things, again, whether it's like not talking about it, that they didn't talk about her feelings with Jess a lot, or it kind of blew up. So like I wonder if there had been, I don't know if like Lane could have done it or something, like a different way to go about those things. But I think, and I can fall into this too, is that, Rory is very intellectual, and sometimes that does get in your way. And I think Paris kind of has this too of like trying to rationalize everything and be smart about it so that when your emotions do take over, you don't know what to do. And I think she gets very emotional, especially with these guys. Whether it's going to Jess in New York and the graduation and stuff, or sleeping with Jean, I think she hits those emotions and just doesn't know what to do with them because she is so in her head a lot. And Paris clearly gets there. Um, that's why she ends up at Yale and not Harvard.
Love
Um,
Paris though.
it's just, but yeah, I think like because her mom was all emotions and she was all pro con list, that like it was hard to, once you experience the other way, she didn't have enough experience there and was like, I don't know what to do about it.
um, let me see. So I do want to get to some of these questions. I'm seeing it in the chat. Typical question, but are you team Jess or Logan or Dean? I'm going to add Dean in there.
So I forgot, I was asking something on Instagram, and because I put Luke in there, I forgot Logan, and everybody was like, where's Logan? Did not do it on purpose. So I am team Dean, but only season one.
Mm,
He gets weird later. I think he's just like a nice early first boyfriend. Clearly, way before he got married, Martha, yes. And then sort of no one until the why did you drop out of Yale? And that's when I start Team Jess, and pretty squarely stay Team Jess all the way through the reunion. I think his character arc is so beautiful, and he grew so much and turned into like, somebody with priorities, and can clearly now communicate his feelings, which he couldn't do, that he can now say, like, Luke, I appreciate that you showed up for me, and now I want to show up for you. Um, so I think he just turned into an incredible person. Um, but I
he's
do
probably
like,
Dean until they made him
I know,
stupid.
until he got married, until he made it stupid. Like,
Yeah,
he went downhill fast. Like,
yeah, he
he
did.
clearly hit a peak and then, um, but he went on to supernatural things. So I
Yeah,
guess
that's
I
right.
just started watching that because a friend likes it, and I'm having a hard time. Like, he's Dean, but he's not Dean, but this other guy is Dean. Anyway,
I know. Yeah, that the whole Lindsay and then cheating on Lindsay, and I mean, a lot of stuff went off the rails, but it was still Amy writing at that point.
yes, that point, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, can't it? That's what her vision was, I guess.
Yeah.
I have this other question in the chat that the Q&A that I want to get to. It's a little bit off topic from what we're talking about, but some of the books reference feel a little intimidating. Do you have any advice for tackling the harder classics or making them more approachable,
Oh, yeah.
other than Cliff Notes?
Yeah. So definitely, I mean, if it helps, like, do what you need to do. Um, in Meet Me at Luke's, so clearly please read Meet Me at Luke's first.
Hmm.
Um, I talk about this a lot, that, I was very academic growing up, and at one point did sit back and go, what am I doing here? Like, what is the point of all this? And so I have learned to make things very personal. And I think that helps. Don't read Anna Karenina like somebody's going to test you on it. Read it as a person. If somebody annoys you, fine. Like, just maybe ask yourself why that person annoys you. Or like, are you, as I read it, I like the Kitty and Levin parts. I don't really like the Anna parts.
Mm.
Like, why is it their story that connects with me more than the Anna story? If you need to skip all the Russian agriculture, skip it. Just skip those pages. It's fine. Like, keep going, make it to the end, get the full story. Like, um, I think like clearly things were either serialized and so it's different than sitting down in a book. Like, give yourself space to not like things, to not understand them, but don't let that stop you. Keep going until you find something that you do connect with or that does resonate something or brings up questions. And that's the part to focus on. Um, that I like to think if there's one sentence that kind of made me stop in my tracks and think a bit, even if I didn't like the rest of the book, that book had a purpose, that
Mhm.
one line made me think. So look for that one character or that one line. I do think reading some other books, either about like the culture or the author, do help sometimes for background information. Um, but make it really personal. I think that helps. Talk about it with your friends and make it really personal with them, because they might have some different insights or, you know, reference something that you're like, oh, we didn't even see that. And that really helps too, just to have some support. So please read them. Don't let something stop you. If you see a word you want to look it up, learn, move on. Don't read about all the architecture. Go ahead and skip it. If you need to put it down for like a year or 12, that's too. Come back to it later. Like, just take the pressure off,
Mhm.
and do it for you. That, like, if you're not in school anymore, nobody's going to test you. Like, your life is the test. And get what you want out of it. And then if it's not for you, that's fine.
Mhm. So of the almost 200 books you read in this challenge, did you have a favorite, one that you really loved?
I'm also trying to read this question at the same time. The letter in Collect and Wick have you riveted until yes, those dramatic scenes and how relatable should have won awards. Yeah, I agree. There are a lot. I Isabel Allende was always on my list, and I just
Mhm.
like, hadn't read her books. And so I really loved The House of the Spirits, even though Rory prefers Ava Luna. Um, I really loved the Yaya Sisterhood, The Divine Secrets.
Mhm.
I thought that was really great. Also things like The Power of Myth, which is weirdly academic, but I just really loved it and it had a big impact on me. So there are, sort of discoveries to be made. And also like for the things I hated, I'm not a horror person. So I have a difficult time with like Stephen King or, In Cold Blood was really bad for me too. But in those instances, I find it helpful to not be a reader but to be a writer and look at their technique instead and like try to like emotionally take myself out of it and just like look at the sentences. Um,
Mhm.
so there have been ones that I definitely do not like or don't want to repeat, but I think they were valuable just in the experience.
Mhm. Okay, so I'm going to read that comment. Right. That's why I'm rewatching Gilmore Girls differently because the lighter intellectual wit kept me riveted, true, even for
Yeah.
myself, until someone pointed out how many of those dramatic scenes are so real and relatable that they should have won awards. Did they not win any awards?
They won an Emmy for makeup for the Festival of Living Art episode, and that's it.
Oh man. And then Candace says, this is a really good question, and I would ask the same. How do you recommend reading Meet Me at Luke's, like timing and sessions? Should we rewatch the episodes that appear to go with chapters? Should we watch the whole? Would you recommend watching the whole series and then reading it?
Yeah, that's a great question. I tried to write it as if, or knowing that some people have never seen the show. There's a lot of my family members who have not seen the show, but were like, I want to read your book. So I did try to make it understandable. There's like a outline of big plot points at the beginning because there's only 7 seasons. That being said, I want you to read it however you want to read it. Like if you like knowing exactly what happened and exactly like I tell you each episode as we go along because I knew a lot of Gilmore fans are very detailed, so we did give those details. Um, but like, do it if you want to read the second to last chapter first. Like, you know, it's not chronological. So yeah, either like watch with episodes as you go along. I think that's a fun way to do it. Some of these podcasts are great. The I Am All In one, Keiko Agena, who played Lane Kim on the show, read the audiobook. So if you are an audio person, she will read the book to you, and you'll have Lane Kim and her voice. So yeah, I think we put a lot of pressure on the way that we should read. Um, and if something seems really, touchy, like if I'm talking about the health chapter and some of your family are going through a health thing and you don't want to get near that, that's not, like skip it and come back to it a couple of years later. So please read in the way that you feel comfortable, in the way that you think supports you the best. If you want to listen to the book and read the book and watch the show at the same time, you know, it's your experience, and I want you to have the best experience that you can.
There's so many things about Gilmore Girls that are still relevant today, but do you ever think about if Gilmore Girls was made today, what are the key things that you think might be different?
I just saw something that said like Gilmore Girls would never be made today, and if I didn't read the full article, and so I wonder if it was a more like it's not as scandalous as things are today, and so I wonder if it was that angle. Um, I think there are a lot of um, body image references that hopefully would be different today. Um, just because those never sit right or translate well.
Mm-hmm.
Even in a year in a life, like you hoped that they would fix it. And that's still that one scene by the pool makes me kind of cringe a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So things like that, that I hope would be different, or I hope that maybe there would be more communication that you like they've been working on it for how many years now and they're still lying to each other and not saying like I want to get married to the man that you love and who loves you and would do anything for you, like he's there cooking your dog a steak or whatever, like he would clearly marry you if you
Mm-hmm.
asked. So things like
Oh my
that.
God, don't even get me started on Paul Anka.
I was just thinking about him today for some reason, I don't even know why, of like what I think he would be doing or something like as the dog. Like, would he have different costumes? I don't know. Um, monkey underpants brain. Um,
Can I ask? We just have a few more minutes, but I want to ask about star power because there were some like really kind of big names there, like Sally Struthers and Sebastian Bach, and oh my gosh, who was the dance teacher?
oh, Miss Patty.
Miss Patty. Yeah, she
Yeah.
was very well known,
Yeah.
and of course, a lot. Most of these characters have gone on to do really big, great things, and I mean Melissa McCarthy, for instance.
Yeah.
Um, I'll never forget her, like when she chopped the back of her, uh,
Oh, yes.
right? She cut it, and she's trying to explain to
Yeah.
Emily like what happened.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So funny. So, is that part of the reason why we love the show too? Is because like we see them then 25 years ago, and we see them now doing great things.
Yeah. I think that's a part of it. The scenes with Carol King
Carole
is
King.
those are amazing. I also think like Sean Gunn. I can't believe. I mean, I only watch Marvel movies because of
Me too.
Top Gun, because I just want to see Kirk because I love Kirk. I am not a superhero movie person, and I only watch them to support him and to see him. So I do think there's a fun nostalgic way of that. Um, but I also think like they were just so genuine, and how could you capture you could see like essence of Suki in some of Melissa McCarthy's things, but I think it's like lightning in a bottle sometimes of like Kirk could never be Kirk anywhere else, and I just think what he did with that character there, like it's so hard to bring it to space or whatever
Mhm.
he's doing. um yeah, so I think there's a part of that too, of whatever magic it was of just Sally Struthers like running down the
Holding
street
her.
and holding her chest. Like it's just hilarious. And it's like the smallest things that I think are so incredible. And the more I watch it, the more I am in awe of just the smallest moments, or like Sebastian Bach. I'm just like, I don't think I would ever listen to that kind of music, but just hearing him sing makes me sort of nostalgic because his voice is Hegelian to me.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
And let me get to this question with Holly. With all the current college bashing, do you think that the drive to the Ivy League admission would stand up and draw an audience?
That's tough. I think there's still an inherent, Ivy Leagues are better in academia and society, that I do think that sort of fight to get to the Ivies is still prevalent and resonant. And I feel like, hearing some other adults with kids applying to college, the like hoops that they have to jump through now, blow my mind. And I'm not that far out of, I mean, I am far out of college, but I'm not like that far, I didn't think. So I do think it's still a very difficult process. And so much about academics and education is very difficult, and it shouldn't be.
Hmm.
So I think, this kind of goes with your question about things that are different. I wish, they were more open about like Rory going to the library. Free books, my friends, is where it's at. Just like the education and power that come from books, and it's sitting there and it's free and it's yours. So I think, the sort of gatekeeping things, whether it's academics or, jobs or something like that, um, that I wish there was somehow a way to make that easier to get to, because there are so many hoops to jump through for things like for college or for jobs these days. Um, that yeah, it's difficult, but I do think in like a weird way is still resonant. Like the situation has changed, but it's still difficult. We're still talking about it. Like people are still like, oh, you went to Harvard, or when other colleges are still very good and known for different things. So I think in a weird way, it still would.
But the episode where Paris absolutely lost it, after all of that pressure that she'd put on herself to get into Harvard, and am I being punished because I had sex or whatever,
Yeah.
comment that she made, that's real. And I think it was real for Lorelai, who wanted to get her into an Ivy League school. She wanted to get, there was dream was for Harvard, and it made her go back to her parents, something she never thought she would do.
Yeah.
So like that drive to go to an Ivy League school really was a factor in this show.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think like it's whether the standards that our parents have or that we have for ourselves, like I have very high standards for myself.
Hmm.
Letting myself down sometimes is very difficult. Or like, if I set my sights on something and it didn't happen, that's still difficult. But I also think like there are other ways to get to things. Like you can transfer, and they now have all these classes online and stuff like that. Um, but yeah, like those standards we still have either inherited from our family or something like that are still prevalent today. And whether it's school or a job, like we still have those sort of family dynamics or
Hmm.
societal dynamics that are at play.
Hmm. Yeah, and that certainly was the case in this fictional town of Stars Hollow,
Yeah.
which we all love so much, and we still talk about, like you said, 25 years later. And I keep thinking, like, can they pull out one more like year in the life kind of thing? Could they do it?
Yeah.
What do you
I don't
think?
know. I mean, Lauren Graham has said she would love like a Christmas special,
Hmm.
like some of the British shows do. And I would love that because, it's such a winter holiday show too, as much as we think of it in the fall.
Oh,
Um,
when there's snow stars, I always think of her.
I do too.
And you
I
have
always
your
gotta go
sweat,
take a walk in that snow.
and you have
Um,
your sweatshirt. You're ready for it.
exactly. I hope,
As
yeah,
you're-
it's my Christmas Luke's sweater. But I also think that's why Meet Me at Luke's was important, because we don't know if we're gonna get another show or something like that. So I wanted to give fans another taste of Gilmore in a slightly different way. because we don't know if there's going to be another show or movie or something. So hopefully this is, another thing that you can rewatch or reread or re-listen to or something to give you that Gilmore experience.
Hmm.
That's
I
awesome.
love it. I absolutely love it because I could, this is something that I'll probably love all of my life. And I
Yeah.
really appreciate you spending your hour with us, telling us all about
Sure.
this. Can I just ask one last question though? Did you get to interview anybody from the show for the book?
I not in person. There were questions that I asked, either through people's agents or teams or like just over email or something. I didn't do a lot of interviews just because that's not an experience that your regular person on the street would have.
Mm,
They would just be watching the show and whatever you felt, you felt. And so
mhm.
that's sort of the experience I wanted to recreate. The only thing I really interviewed people for were like facts or, the costumer. I just like checked that I got something right. Or the section where the cast and crew reflect on the 25th anniversary. And there's a section for that. But I really wanted it to be like a fan-led experience because it's not like, you could just call up Kelly Bishop and be like, hey, what do you think about this? So
Well, there is a
I really wanted to
documentary.
stay true to that.
There is a documentary right now on Netflix, I believe, about it too. So like there's
Wait, it's
there's
on Netflix now?
I don't know if it's on now, but I know that it's either coming or it's on now.
So
So
yes, there is the one that's like something coffee talk fast. They changed it from searching from Stars Hollow.
mhm.
If it's the same one, which I think it is, that I did do an interview for them, and you could see me in the trailer. I have on a silver jacket, so I'm there for like a minute. Um, that has a lot of the interviews and stuff like that too with people who are in the community. So yeah, definitely check that out.
Well, it's not going away. So I really
Yeah.
love it and I appreciate it. And I'm so glad you did this. I know you're super busy with the launch of this book, and I'm sure it's very, very popular.
Oh, thank you. And every fall I'm here, I'm ready to talk about it.
I might be in touch again then because we have to do a take two.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
for everybody who's been here, thank you for your questions and your enthusiasm for this show and this book because, like I said, I could live in Stars Hollow. Not maybe with Taylor, but the rest of it.
Yeah, or at least visit.
Yeah, yeah, I wouldn't mind visiting.
Thank you all so much, everyone.
Yeah. Have a good night.
Thanks, you too.
Thanks.